The Zotac Zone is the latest entrant to the handheld gaming market, serving as a mid-generational leap over its competitors like the Legion Go and the ROG Ally. So let's get right into it with the unboxing experience and the peripherals you get in the box. You get a black box with gold accents and a light magnetic seal at the top, holding the components that fold together. Opening it up, you get the Zone itself, along with a Type-C to Type-C charging cable and the 65-watt travel adapter with converters for every possible region. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the Zone itself. Weighing in at just 692 grams, the Zone is incredibly light for a device with a 7-inch touchscreen, Full HD AMOLED display. While the bezels aren't as sleek as its competitors, the 800 nits of brightness and 120Hz refresh rate more than make up for it. Moving on to the joysticks, I was happy to see that Zotac has implemented Hall effect sensors, which mitigate stick drift to a large extent. Around the joysticks are radial discs that can be programmed to whatever you want. On both sides of the device are two trackpads for mouse movements, and at the back are two buttons for mouse 1 and mouse 2. Resting naturally where your hand sits while using the device. This, in my opinion, is a huge help because Windows on a touchscreen to me is still somewhat of a nightmarish experience. The face and shortcut buttons are fairly standard, with Zotac incorporating both a home button and an overlay button for quick access to your performance toggles. What is different is the D-pad, which has a unique click to it when used. It took me a little while to get used to this, but after a bit I kind of like the tactile feedback that it gives you. The triggers have a toggle between full travel modes and button modes, in which the travel is reduced by half and clicks almost instantaneously. Propping it up on its stand, you'll be able to enjoy the RGB strip at the back that can be programmed via software. The exhaust fan is well placed and is far enough from your hands that you don't feel the heat coming out of it. Finally, in terms of connectivity, you have your headphone jack, you have your USB port at the top, USB port at the bottom, SD card slot, and the power button and the volume control buttons up here. Powering the device is the AMD Ryzen 8840U processor, backed up by 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM, clocked at 7500 megatransfers per second. Graphics are powered by the AMD Radeon 780M and makes for decent results in most games. The biggest letdown for me with this device is just a paltry 512GB of storage, which in this day and age basically nets you about 3 to 4 games on the device. Moving on to the software experience, booting up the device takes you to your familiar Windows 11 interface, and while Windows is fairly intuitive as a desktop or laptop platform, it's really not that great when it comes to touchscreens. With such a big screen, I found myself making accidental presses, hovering over the trackpad by mistake, changing my cursor position, and overall just not having a great time. This problem was compounded by the fact that my device did not ship with the Zotac One launcher, and I had to go searching on the internet to find it, where it wasn't readily available. I had to put in multiple terms like Zotac software, Zotac Zone software, Zotac One gaming hub, and after a lot of searching, which led me to page 2 of Google. Page 2. I don't think I've been there since 2005. Anyway, I managed to find the software, download it, install it, and get the Zotac One launcher running. After that, I installed the AMD drivers, and I was good to go. After a bit of tinkering and uninstalling the Zotac One software again, I finally got the Zotac Zone to show up with the Zotac One overlay every time I pressed the button. Earlier, every time I pressed it, it would do nothing. That said, Zotac's attention to detail on the app is pretty good, and I would say that the performance modes allow you a lot of fine control over what you want to do. Inbuilt are 3 presets with options of quiet, balanced, and performance. To the right, the software allows you to create new performance profiles with whatever TDP you choose and whatever CPU boost modes that you choose. You can also adjust VRAM size and have as many profiles as you want. On the right, the quick menu gives you a brief update on your device's status. It tells you if Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are on, whether your mic is being used, volume, and brightness controls. Unfortunately, the D-pad does nothing on this menu, instead forcing you to use the right trackpad to select what you want to select. That being said, the Zotac Zone does excel at one thing, and that is performance scaling. To get the maximum out of your handheld device, it's important to understand the relationship between power and battery life. Usually, the sweet spot for most handheld devices is between 15 to 18 watts, and the Zotac Zone is no exception. At 15 watts, it shows brilliant performance scaling, beating out its competitors by a significant margin. For the Zotac Zone, I'd recommend using the balanced performance mode, which uses 15 watts of power and gives you the best battery life to frames ratio. For example, in my testing, I played Spider-Man Remastered on the Zotac Zone and averaged around 43 frames per second at 1080p medium. Using the balanced performance target, which is 15 watts, I got about 1 hour 45 minutes of gameplay at around 43 frames per second, which is pretty great. Now, pushing the 48.5 watt-hour battery to its limit, we move to the 30 watt TDP, and here's where things get interesting. While the frame rates did improve and come up to around 53 to 55 frames per second, what I did notice was a marked drop in battery performance. Now, I've gone from 1 hour 45 minutes to around 45 minutes at the same quality preset for just another 10 frames. To get a good idea of the performance on this device, I'm going to put up some benchmarks right here. It was fairly evident to me that choosing 1080p as the target resolution is not ideal, and I found myself swapping down to 720p to take advantage of the 120Hz refresh rate on this panel. Players who enjoy emulators, retro games, Hollow Knight, a little lighter stuff like that are truly going to be wowed by the battery life on this device. Big AAA titles like Warhammer or Spider-Man are going to be very taxing, and the battery life is not going to be as stellar, but you will get better performance compared to its competitors at this price range. That said, with decent haptic feedback, relatively quiet performance, and an ergonomic and comfortable shape, the Zotac Zone is actually quite a joy to use. That being said, here's my final pros and cons for the device. Pros. The Ryzen 7 8840U offers best-in-class power scaling and is a great performer. The 7-inch AMOLED screen is great, and 1080p is a good balance between lower resolutions like 800p and too high resolutions like 1200p. The Hall effect sensors are a big plus, ensuring that the longevity of your device is not questioned. Overall, the weight and design of this is pretty comfortable, making for long gaming sessions that don't feel taxing. And now for the cons. Choosing Windows 11 as the operating system is pretty safe, since everything will 100% run on this thing. The negatives are that Windows 11 is still very suboptimal for a touchscreen experience. This makes me a lot more impatient for SteamOS counterparts, and hopefully Zotac would consider that for its next Zone entrant. Second, having just 512 gigabytes of storage is, in today's landscape, an absolute no-no for me. Because if you consider it this way, installing Call of Duty, GTA 5, and another game, that's your entire drive full. The Zotac software was pretty buggy, and it wasn't a fun experience to get it working, but once it did, it was fairly okay and wasn't a deal-breaking experience overall. All that said, the unconfirmed yet expected price for this device in the Indian market is around 95,000 rupees. Whether or not this device is for you, I hope this review helped in making an objective decision. For more tech news, stay tuned to gossip.gg, like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.